Stand by for broadcast.
You're listening to Inside Air, a behind-the-wire view of the Royal Air Force, its people, technology and operations.
Hello, I'm Squadron Leader Peter Lisney, and in this episode, we meet 4 pilots who embarked on the world's toughest endurance challenge. We'll also reheat a few stories, just in case you missed them. But first, see if you can identify this noise. Find out if you're right at the end of this episode. Now, inspired by the resilience of desperately ill children, 4 RAF pilots swapped their normal cockpits for one in a transatlantic rowing boat. 3,000 miles of sea later, our correspondent, Flight Lieutenant Chris Sully, found out how they fared during their epic voyage.
I think that's really key, the way that we went about stuff on the boat, because all in the military, there's different ranks here, but it is, to kind of phrase it, not rankless but classless society.
We're one of probably 4 people that have ever been in that space of ocean, seeing this thing, experiencing this at this time.
I think rowing an ocean should be mandatory for all RAF personnel. Wholly unrealistic, I know.
In 2014, the family of Wing Commander Phil Holdcroft, an RAF helicopter pilot, received some devastating news. Isla, his youngest daughter, was diagnosed with leukemia. Happily, after her treatment, Isla is now a happy and healthy 9-year-old. Phil wanted to do something to show support for some of the incredible charities which had supported his family when they needed it most. Some may have taken up the challenge of a marathon run or 2, maybe a long bike ride or an Ironman event. Phil, however, decided to go big and rode the Atlantic Ocean with a group of friends and colleagues. Alongside fellow helicopter pilot Flight Lieutenant Cy Berry, Typhoon pilot Squadron Leader Sonny Rowe and Flight Lieutenant Chris Corrington Smith, who's now a flying instructor for new recruits, Phil formed the Atlantic Flyers. Fewer than 1,000 people have successfully rowed the Atlantic, and the Atlantic Flyers, with their support team, were determined to add to that number, a task made no easier due to the fact that none of the team were in the same part of the world, as Wing Commander Phil Holdcroft explains.
It started with a vision to row the Atlantic, to raise money for a charity, and to do something truly life-changing, and to pull a team together and to share a vision. It relied on absolute trust between us. It couldn't just be one person's agenda, one person's motives. We had to understand what we wanted to get out of it. We had to trust each other that we were going to support that shared vision. So I don't know what the other boys think in terms of how trust fed in for them.
The build-up to the campaign was pretty disparate in that we had CS in Lincolnshire, we had Phil at the start of it in America, and then coming back to Shrivenham, and I was up in Scotland for most of it. We had Cy, who was out in Cyprus. CS ended up deploying for nearly 6 months just before we left. So in a normal campaign, you would hope to have everyone together on almost a weekly basis, and you could actually see that everyone is putting in the work and that they're progressing, but we didn't have that. So instead we had to rely on each other doing that hard work and the graft to get us to where we needed to be, and that comes back to our common vision, which I'm sure we'll talk about shortly. But we wanted to know that everyone was working towards that, and the only way you can really gain that is through trusting each other. So that's why, to me, it was so important, especially in the build-up when we were all in different locations.
Flight Lieutenant Chris Corrington Smith, known as CS, says that clearly defining team roles helped massively.
So I think we were all given our own responsibilities, just with looking after the equipment, doing the preparation training, the mental preparation, the physical side of stuff, and then building sponsorship, building the social media background and the whole package behind that. So we're all, as Sonny said, all isolated in our own little world. But then when you're trying to make sure that you've done your bit so the whole of the team can pull together and still produce a product at the end of it. And that was really, really important for us right up to August last year when it was the first time all 4 of us had been together as a team, and we actually got out on the boat. So the journey, the 2.5 years it took us to get to that start line was a challenge in itself. And then the row was just a little bit tagged on the end of it. That was the hard graft of lack of sleep, just trying to get yourself to the finish line. But it's just understanding and just looking after each other and ensuring that, as a team, we're all responsible for each individual element, and then therefore we're all going to do our very best to make sure that something's going to be delivered. And
Flight Lieutenant Cy Berry agrees with CS's views.
Yeah, I think I'd sort of echo everything the guys have said. For me, just being asked to be on the team, I think that was a huge, okay, now I feel that weight of trust and responsibility that's been put into me to sort of do my bit, and I'm sure the other guys felt exactly the same, that we were all going through these kind of individual training and sort of individual responsibilities for how that fed into the campaign, and we sort of built those accountability tools to feed back in, but just knowing that the team was relying on you for your bit of the campaign, to do the physical training, to do our individual responsibilities that was going to be really necessary to make the campaign work. And like you said, often in isolation and geographically separated for the majority of the build up to the campaign. So that's sort of where I felt it definitely first, and then that only kind of grew from there once we were kind of in the boat together, and then right up into the start line and through the race. I really want to challenge myself, and then knowing, I guess, going into sort of understanding the personality of your team members and knowing your people and knowing all these different angles where they're coming from, and then you sort of automatically get this intrinsic buy-in to everyone else's individual goals, and then that unified shared goal. It was the hook that we all came back to ground ourselves whenever there were many distractions on this campaign with work and some of the more shiny things in the sort of start of the race and the kind of fanfare of the task, and some of the ego parts of it of racing potentially. And then we always could come back to that shared vision to really kind of be that kind of solid datum that we'd all decided on, to kind of really kind of cage where we were at and bring ourselves back to motivation, really, essentially, in some of the more difficult times.
So trust in your fellow rowers obviously had to be huge, but the team also needed to set individual tasks and goals.
It's a useful tool, isn't it? It's very easy to set this lofty goal of, which was our goal leading up to it, of let's get to the start line and be competitive for the race, for the race win. What does that actually mean? Because that's all good and well saying that, but if you don't know what that means on a day-to-day basis, it's not going to serve you in any way whatsoever. So breaking that down into, well, if I want to do that, then I therefore need to be potentially this fit, or I need to be able to potentially lift this weight, or do this distance in an hour on an ergo, or whatever that comes down to. And if you want to do that, what do you then need to do on a weekly basis, and then what do you need to do on a daily basis? So that's a really good way of breaking down your overall goal into something that's manageable, and for us that is building a process to get to the outcome that you hopefully want, because without that I think we would have been very unaware of what was actually required on a daily basis, and we would have been shooting in the dark trying to achieve something with no real way of actually building the steps to get there. So it was really important to break that down, and then not only break it down to check that that's the right path, but also to check that we all agreed with that path. Because as CS said, if you then realise that it means, let's say, 6 gym sessions a week, and one of you doesn't want to commit that time, despite saying that they initially wanted to go out and be competitive, then that's a real in some ways win, because you can start talking about that right there and see if that is the right goal for the team, but also a reality check as well, so that people really know what's expected of them, and then before we can start acting on that and trusting each other, because we all know that each other is putting in the same amount of effort to achieve the same goal.
And I think what's different maybe to daily lives in the Air Force, where if you've got a vision and a goal which you're going to achieve with the military, often there's an accountability which is in your daily work routine, someone seeing what you're producing. But we were spread across 3 continents for a large chunk of the training, and in fact we spent only 2 weeks, as mentioned, together before the actual row. So we had to absolutely trust that each of us was committing, physically, emotionally, and financially to achieve that end state, that vision which we'd set out. So the model was really good because it gave us these daily activities which we needed to do. But actually, the success was in trusting each other to doing it and holding ourselves accountable so that when we pitched up at the start line, we were in the best possible shape to perform.
But I think the key to the reason why that worked so well for us is because the openness that we had with each other. So the conversations we had, the honesty that we had between us as a team, and just the frank conversations that Luke facilitated for us when we were in La Gomera, and going back to our core values and our raison d'etre to be there, just meant that we were really honest with ourselves about how we're getting on with our training or preparation, and during the row how we were feeling, what we were strong at, what we felt we were weak at, understanding ourselves, understanding each other. That then meant that we communicated better, and I think that's, compared to some of the other teams out there, I think that was one of our real strengths all the way through the campaign. Is just that communication piece going. We've had a really good lead into the campaign, and we know what we're doing, we know what each other's thinking and how we're going to go about it.
But having someone like you, Luke, there to facilitate that was so important, like you say, because we, for one of the big things for the team, going into all of this, was that we had made a pact that it's about us. We've done the process, we've broken it down, we've worked on a daily basis to achieve what we want to achieve, on a monthly basis to achieve what we want to achieve at the start line, and now we're just going to worry about us as a team and not worry about anyone else. And then we had a good discussion, I don't know, it was about 5 days before the start of the race, where you said, okay, so there's a race tracker, are you going to look at the race tracker? At which point we all said, of course we're going to look at the race tracker, why wouldn't you? It's good to know where everyone else is. To which your response was clearly, well, why? What does it matter what everyone else is doing? And that was really interesting to dive into, because we were looking at the race tracker to see how other people were doing to know whether we should go faster or slower, right? Ultimately, that was what it was. And that is not just focusing on your own team, that is focusing on the wider race and then letting other people influence what you're doing from external. So that actually was something that we discussed at the start, wasn't necessarily resolved because there are quite strong feelings either way, but it set the scene for us to be able to discuss that openly throughout the rest of the race, which was really good because it wasn't then an issue when someone was wanting to look or someone wasn't wanting to look. We knew that each other were different. We knew that each other had different reasons behind potentially wanting to look at where we were in the race, and we know how to then actually talk about it and deal with it. So having the time to discuss that sort of thing beforehand and really dig into what your goal actually means and how it's going to act out on a day-to-day basis, and then also building the environment in which you can continually talk about it, it was really important.
Training completed, goal set, and the race gets underway in the Canary Islands to row the Atlantic. And then?
Adrenaline was flowing. We'd just gone out with this thing that we're building towards for 2 years, much more for Phil. Was finally starting, and we're about to go in the big wide sea. We'd just got out of the harbour, and we put the autotiller on for the first time because Chris had been hand steering it up until that point, and the autotiller, for whatever reason, was in a mode that meant that it kept turning us and it kept putting us back towards the place we'd just started from. So everyone started getting excited at this. And we had a little bit of Chris was trying to fix it. We're going, what are you doing, Chris? Is it fixed yet? Have you done this? Have you tried that? And after we had a little sit down, a little bit of a debrief, and went, we trust Chris to do the right thing, right? So we don't need to shout, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Really, all we do is when you're on the oars, you row, and when you're fixing something, you fix it. If you need help, you would ask. Okay, so it just enables us to work better as a team, and it comes back to Si's point that you trust the guys to do the job that they're out there to do. If they need more help, they'll ask for help because we know that's how we're going to work as a unit.
You're also working with the unknown with that as well, because what's really interesting is that none of us have ever rowed an ocean before. So, and for us, it was a 36-day epic. So, how hard do you physically push yourself in your 2-hour block in order to get the boat going fast? Because our whole raison d'etre was you get up, you do what you need to do to make the boat go fast, and that's as a team purpose. So that's why we don't need to look at what other people are doing, because if we get up and our whole raison d'etre is to make the boat go fast, then you don't need any other external influences to that, because you're just making the boat go fast. But then down to the individual, you look around and you might go, well, I reckon Phil could push a bit harder there. Like he looks like he could put more energy into it. But then, but then you look at it and go, well, I know that Phil is doing the absolute best that he feels he can put in at this point in order to sustain that effort over 36 days. And equally, he might be looking at me thinking exactly the same thing, but we're going, well, no, I know that he's doing that. So there's no point to question it. There's no point having any feelings going, oh, he's not putting his weight, or suddenly looking at me when he sat behind me going, CS, you can pull harder than that. Because we all know that we're pushing to our own individual limits in order to make sure that boat goes fast, and therefore there's no question about it.
I think that point of trust and empowerment is key. I think early on, you're quite right. We second guessed what people were doing. Why are you moving us 5 degrees down? But as the race went on, we developed complete trust. When you saw a hand appear out of the cabin and adjust the heading by 2 degrees, you weren't asking them, what are you doing? You knew that person was giving up precious sleep to look at the nav and to check whether the boat could potentially go a tiny bit faster by being on a different course. And you trusted them. The same as someone was fixing a piece of equipment. If they needed help, they'd ask for it, but you trusted them to do it to their best of ability. And I say another point is we all had different needs. Yes, in terms of sleep and how much we could give at any one point, that would obviously change over time. But we trusted decisions people were making. For example, whether they needed more calories. Maybe that was me. Or they needed a piece of equipment which they needed to bring, which perhaps the other people didn't have. And you trusted that was going to give them the morale, the motivation, and enhance their performance, that it was worth doing. So, that was key. We recognised everyone had slightly different needs coming into it. But as a team, to get the best out of it, we needed to trust that they were making the right decisions for the team.
And that's just not on boat either, is it? I mean, going back to Dave was with us in the entirety of the build-up towards this, and we're talking years, we're not just talking a few weeks. So we didn't have to think once we'd sent some social media content, videos, whatever, off the boat, we'd have to think once about what was happening with them. We knew that Dave was doing the absolute best thing off the boat as well. So it doesn't have to be the immediate environment. That is everyone that we brought along on the journey, because we all are working towards the same goal, because we've spoken about it every time we've met and spoken about how we're progressing towards it.
Shore-based support squadron leader Dave Bennett, who's based at Ramstein, said that the team's honesty with themselves and with each other was hugely beneficial to their effort.
That was actually really remarkable to me, is how open the entire team was with each other. And you brought all those points out, because everybody sat down and there was no judgment. And there were some really stark and honest conversations that came out of it. And I think that hugely helped the guys when they were at sea. And I think it hugely helped them in the build-up to the race.
Absolutely. I think every day, the tone was set very early on. We wanted transparency. That was one of our core principles, and that was being honest with each other, whether we were on a low or a high. And as a team, the swing between lows and high was so frequent, and how high the highs were and low the lows were, that blew our minds. But it was being able to talk about that, and there were tough times. There was bereavements of family whilst we were at sea, and being able to talk that through was critical. Rather than bottle it up, it was such an intense environment there. You were working in an area of less than 8 meters where you can move around, and often you'd spend your whole day within 4 meters of that. You needed to be able to talk, and it wasn't all good stuff. You needed to be able to say what was on your mind, what was going wrong, and let the team support you. So vulnerability for me was key, and I know the team were incredibly open with their feelings at all points.
I think you generated a really good just process for us to go through, which was, we talked about what the different roles were. So, if one of us is going to get up and make breakfast, what does that mean? Is it you make the food and then just leave the pots out, or is it you make the food and then everyone eats and then you clean the pots up as well? And it sounds a really silly, simple task, but it's good to know what that breakdown is. And then we're all looking out because if our raison d'etre is to make the boat go fast, it's then, well, get up, what can I do here to help the speed of the boat? And that might not just be the physical speed through the water, but that might be making sure that one of us has food or water, so it's topped up, so that we're then ready to keep going, and therefore we're not wasting time at the end of our shift losing sleep, so that when they're more in a better chance or better position to be able to perform on our next shift, and therefore it keeps rolling down the line. And you said this, gave us a task that when we finished our jobs, or we were just going off shifts, like, guys, I've done this, this, and this. I'm now going to go get my head down. I haven't done this because I'm too tired. And we all adopted that, going, well, guys, I'm going to get my head down now. And we just realised that, okay, he's done the best he can do up to that point, and he needs to have a stop now. And I know that if he perhaps hasn't finished the full job, which I don't think any of us did, but we all knew that if they hadn't, they would just been honest and going, right, this is, I need this sleep now. I need to stop. I need to have that rest.
That's not just individual, though, is it? I mean, you're thinking of the team still in all of that, right? Yeah. When we all knew that. We knew the person was not doing any more jobs at that point and was going to get some sleep, because that, in the long run, will make the boat go faster. It was as simple as that.
The team feel strongly that some of the things they learnt for the Atlantic row have great crossovers with life in the RAF. Flight Lieutenant Cy Berry.
Yeah, I think just to sort of tag on that weather router point, I just thought it really hit home that lesson of when you're bringing people into the team. Like Sonny alluded to, we made sure they understood the mission statement, and we were because we were in that practice of being vulnerable, like straight away. We said, these are our goals, and this is what we really want to achieve. And obviously, there's risk in that when you're vulnerable and say, I want to go out and try and win this thing. And he said, which was brilliant. He was like, great, because that's what I want to try and do. And then he almost set a load of contracts, vulnerable contracts with us. So he's like, if you're going to try and do this, when I tell you to do this, I just need to know that you're going to row as hard as you can. Otherwise, this plan's not going to work. And so we kind of, he shared his principles and we shared ours. And then we sort of unified the team, and then we were one team. And so there was this great, it was a great example of like understanding that shared vision together, being vulnerable, and then building that trust, and then knowing that now you can, once you know that, and you've checked the understanding that you both get each other, you're then free to go and offload that kind of topic or job or whatever it is. And what struck me is quite often people say they're doing mission command, but then they go ahead and micromanage the jobs that they've outsourced, which effectively doesn't free up anyone's capacity. It sort of hinders it disempowers the person that you've given that job to, and it uses up your capacity. And so I think quite often we see lip service or bad examples of that. And it generally comes down to a breakdown in, did you both have that solid brief and understanding of what the goal is? Because if you do, then you're totally freed up and those two parties can go and do their thing. But if that's not done correctly, you're essentially just wasting both of each other's time for a worse product.
And I think that's really key, the way we went about stuff on the boat, because all in the military, there's different ranks here, but it is, to kind of phrase it, the not rankless but classless society, so that we're all doing everything, everything together as a team around a unifying purpose to get us to that finish line, and just making sure that we go about stuff in the right way. And it might be that myself or Si, as the lower ranks on the boat, have and yourself as as a sergeant PTI, you've got the great idea that gets thrown in that we all work around, as opposed to it all having to be coming from a top-down kind of structure, which means that we benefit from the knowledge and experience of everybody on the boat, as opposed to it trying to be led by one person who perhaps doesn't have the experience behind to achieve the aim. So I think that was a real success that we had, is that honesty, vulnerability, openness, and that classless kind of approach to it.
Absolutely agree. It was about the right person to do the job at the right time. As a wing commander and as a project leader, it was a no-brainer decision that the best person to skip at a boat was going to be UCS, who had the experience, and rank absolutely didn't come into it. You were the person the team could get behind on the boat to do it. And the same with yourself, Luke, as a sergeant, you're still absolutely the most appropriate person to mentor us and to coach us because of your experience and your knowledge and your credibility as a person. So that was really refreshing. And I guess it's something which we had an opportunity to embrace, but definitely I think the Air Force could learn from for how agile we were in applying that rankless sort of situation.
All well and good, but a boat in the mid-Atlantic is a small place to be. Surely there must have been some conflict.
So many people have asked us, how many times do you have arguments? I wasn't party to a single argument on the boat, so unless it happened when I was sleeping, and I'm pretty confident guys will back me up on that, it didn't happen on the boat. And I think the reason was because we were able to talk about things as they were building rather than when they became an issue. So if someone was annoying you, say, I'm sorry guys, this is really annoying me right now. It may be completely irrational. It just is. Can someone help me out with that, please? And everyone would help out because they too would have probably little niggles that were annoying them as well, which happens when you're spending 12 hours a day sat on a single seat going back and forwards. So yeah, that really helped with stopping conflict coming to a head.
I think certainly you nailed it there, but for me is we all recognised that going into it, it wasn't going to be like a normal work environment where you can tolerate certain things which annoy you during the day and you can vent at night and vent at the weekend. There was no escaping each other. We were in each other's faces, millimetres apart at times for the entire day. So I think we all took the approach that if something was going to frustrate us, raise it straight away, but in a non-confrontational way. Just explain where you're coming from. We all got it. And some things did seem irrational, but we got, for whatever reason, that was going to wind that individual up. So I'm going to stop urinating on him when I'm in the middle of the night, for example.
So that was also a really comes back to our sort of unifying purpose, that we break that down as to what it meant at different stages. So that 2.5 years, 2 years, 3 years build up to the start line was we want to do everything we can do to be in the best possible position where we could win this race when we set off. As soon as we got to the start line, that was now complete. Well, we've done everything we can. We're physically prepared. We're mentally prepared. The boat's good to go. We've got all the kit. We've serviced it. We know how to use it. We're done. Finished. Right. And then we said, right, we're going to raison d'etre. Boat needs to go as fast as possible at each point. But if we get to that finish line and we're not good mates at the end of it, then we've fundamentally failed at this campaign. So we need to do everything we can do to keep that, but we need to, again, coining a phrase, return with honour at the other end, going, we are better mates than when we got on that boat. And that's the thing. So one of the things I'm most proud of actually about the campaign is that we've all got to the other end. We didn't have a single argument.
One of the big things for me was us deciding what success looked like, wasn't it? And when even at the beginning, we said that success looked like us all getting together and wanting to get together in 5 years' time for Christmas dinner. So that was kind of the overarching goal for us, wasn't it? And being fast was, a pride thing, but being good mates was the biggest part of that.
Yeah.
I know. I just add to CS's point about returning for honour. I distinctly remember about 36 hours from the end of the race, we were all physically hanging on by our fingernails in this head-to-head race with this team of 5 Scottish men who may have received some expletives from our boat at that point. But I think I remember recognising that for the rest of my life, I would look back and either be really proud or really disappointed with how we all behaved for that remaining 36 hours. And it wasn't about how much effort we put in to try and win against the opposition. It was about how we behaved to each other as individuals, how we treated each other when we were absolutely at our lowest physical ebb and so close. And Yeah, that is absolutely what I'm most proud of looking back now, is how everyone behaved, how they gelled, pulled together, and performed as individuals.
For the shore-based support of Luke Horrocks and squadron leader Dave Bennett, the onshore support went way beyond online postings and keeping the team in the public eye, as Dave explained.
At the start of the row, it was a lot of back and forth with the team, because I was obviously chatting to Phil most days. And there came a point where I had to sort of recognize what the team needed rather than what I needed. So I remember telling Phil off and saying, you don't need to call me all the time. I got this. You guys go and prioritize yourselves. But in terms of pure motivation, I was already so sold in the vision of what the guys were trying to achieve. I didn't need any further motivation. It was great getting all the money coming in. So initially it started off for me as I was going to support my friend Phil, who's obviously been through this horrible time, and I couldn't help him when that was happening. And as I got to know the team, it became very much to support the team. And then the applied task is to support the families, because if people's families aren't looked after, then they're not going to be in such a great place to do the job properly. So the motivation I got was there was plenty of feedback from the families. From the money going into the Just Giving account. So that was amazing.
What Dave did, which was brilliant, is he grew the team. So when we were away, it's very easy for your families to be at home and know that you're doing this challenge, which is quite dangerous, and to be worried about that, because they're not really part of it, because you're quite isolated. Well, you're very isolated when you're in the middle of the Atlantic, albeit we have a link back where we're sending some videos every now and again. We might be able to send a text message every now and again. But what Dave did is he built a community where he brought in our family and our friends, and he made them part of the team by keeping them informed, feeding anything that he could to them, bringing anything from them that he thinks is worthwhile coming onto the boat. And he knows, because he's been part of the build-up, what is good to come on the boat and what isn't good to come on the boat. And he's speaking to us and seeing how we're changing from day to day from the videos that are going back. So that clearly shifts as we're going across the row as well. So what that meant was our team wasn't the four of us, it wasn't the six of us sat here, it was so much bigger than that, and that meant so much to us because we knew that we had so many more people behind us and really invested in this row. And I think the biggest thing that I found coming back, it wasn't just, hey, we did a row, we're now back. The amount of people that came up and said, we were tracking it, it was really great, seeing all the updates, seeing what you were doing, really felt part of it. And we even met someone on the stairs today that we'd never met before. He said the same thing as well, which I think that's huge credit to Dave, because not only did it, at one end increase the level of sponsorship that we got, but it made it so much better for us, but it also made it so much better for our family and friends as well, because they were part of the journey.
That's right, yeah. I mean, he built communities, quite rightly, and incredible. And he's famous in all of our families, Dave Bennett. They've never met him, but he's an absolute superhero, and giving up his Christmas Day, New Year's Eve to probably work harder than we did on the oars. But yeah, eternally grateful, Dave.
I think it comes back to that, what were we out there to do? And the campaign part was a huge part of what we defined as success. So it wasn't. I think we get caught up in the achievement metrics quite often of where did you place or what score did you get or all this stuff. But sort of using those tools to kind of reframe what we were doing and go like, yeah, but we're in this hugely privileged position to kind of like share this, amazing. Look at, we're one of probably 4 people that had ever been in that space of ocean, seeing this thing, experiencing this at this time. So to take 5 minutes, even though you're sort of losing sleep, or somebody, you might feel that you're putting upon others because someone's making you breakfast, or someone's doing this, or someone's checking the maps. You're doing those jobs that we've handed out, and knowing that that's an integral part to the success of the campaign was something we all, I think we all kind of came back and recaged ourselves that that's the vision that we defined as a success, capturing the media and sharing it with the community that Dave was building and the charity was sharing on our behalf back home, was key to it. So I think it's something that we all kind of got behind and wanted to make sure we took the time to kind of smell the roses and have those memories and share it with people.
And despite being thousands of miles away from the Atlantic rowers, Dave was able to help keep that morale high, driving the team forwards. Wing Commander Phil Holdcroft.
He knew intrinsically what to push to us and what not to. For me, I remember some cards which were written by desperately ill children in hospital, a situation which my daughter had been in, several years ago. These are children who had made Christmas cards for the Atlantic Flyers to say thank you for the money which has been raised, and for all of us, that was such a boost. It was such a boost, and with little videos which came on board, and all of these formed such a huge part of our motivation. And yes, there was part of us which was motivated by being as fast as possible and I guess physically performing. But I guess what we actually got a lot of our motivation was feedback from others, either via the sat phone, via images which were sent to us, and that absolutely fueled us throughout the race.
And Phil says that he was taken aback mid-Atlantic by how much his fellow rowers were inspired by the donations to the charities they were supporting.
That was really powerful for me, because I thought I'd be the only one who really cared about the total, because I knew what that money was going to do and transform the lives of seriously ill children. But it was so rewarding hearing Sunny, CS and Sai, pestering for the latest update on the total race, because we all had this shared vision. It had come together, and we all wanted the same outcome from the race. So that was a pretty magical moment.
You knew you were doing it for someone else, didn't you? That a poorly child that I've never met has taken time out of their day to draw a picture of us on a boat and get that sent out to us. That's, you're not going to go out onto the oars and not pull hard after that. That was massive.
Amazing.
The Royal Air Force Atlantic Flyers team completed the crossing in 36 days and 24 minutes, arriving in Antigua after a 3,000-mile row from the Canary Islands. They finished in second place overall and became the fastest military team to ever row the Atlantic. They also raised nearly £45,000 of their 50k target for the Starlight Children's Charity. You can still donate by searching for Atlantic Flyers on the Just Giving website. So what lessons do the team feel they've learned which might be of use to the wider RAF? Wing Commander Phil Holdcroft.
So for me, I think the military does a lot in preparing you to do some incredible things. I compared the whole campaign to being like deploying on military operations. If I was told on day one of joining the Air Force, right, you're going to be flying at 50 feet above the green zone in Helmand, it would scare you, it would intimidate you. But they build you up, they train you, it's done progressively, there's trust in the team. And I think that absolutely fell into this campaign. None of us had rowed an ocean. None of us knew what it'd be like being 1,500 miles, from the nearest land. Yet we were able to build up that trust, do things incrementally, and at no point, I think, was anyone frightened or felt that they were out of their comfort zone. And that was because of the trust, the teamwork, and stuff we were able to draw on from the military. So that, for me, is pretty powerful. It's that tool set that the military's given us that we can apply to other environments like rowing an ocean.
Amazing. I think I agree. When we looked at all the other teams, so there are 36 teams out there when we got to La Gomera, and you're there for 2 weeks before you start. I felt that we were better prepared than other teams because it felt very familiar, like you said, that it felt like we were going on detachment or ops or whatever it was, because we'd say goodbye to the family. We knew that we wouldn't be able to speak to them quite so much. We knew what was important to get back to them, and then we knew we had to focus on the task, because that was really good. I think what we then worked on was that single message, and I think the Air Force has that, in that the Air Force wants to achieve generating air power, right? Let's say that, but pushing that down to a smaller level of what that means for you in your day-to-day life and why your job is important and what benefit that is going to have for the team is potentially something that can actually look to generate more output and more buy-in from people as well, because if you know how your job is directly affecting the overall effort, you're going to be more motivated to do that. And that's definitely something that I think we, either via luck or via good process, managed to harness that in our team, and I think that's why we had a good time, look back on it fondly, but also did well in the event as well.
Brilliant. And yourself, Sir Chris?
I think for me the big takeaway was that putting 4 guys together in a boat does not make a team. putting 4 guys together in a boat who understand each other and who are united by the vulnerability, by a unified vision that is true to themselves. So it's not just this arbitrary thing to work towards. It's, what does this, as Sonny says, what does this mean to you? And therefore, why are you motivated to do that? And then the communication throughout ourselves, that's what generates a team. And the Air Force, because we're all busy and we've all got many different draws from different pulls from different areas with Ukraine going off, with COVID going on, we're trying to support ops and ongoing ops in Iraq, etc., and around the world. We're all being pulled to do these different things, but they don't all align up. They're under this banner of air power, but perhaps they don't. You can't see where they all line up together. So drawing it back, invest in your people by looking at the human performance optimization, and then being truthful, honest, and unselfish generates a team, and give that team at a small level your direction to follow, so that you can then pull all those different small teams together into the bigger picture.
Great. And yourself, Si?
I guess I was really struck by a lot of the campaign. We were obviously, it felt like as the team initially we were asking for things, whether it be sponsorship or people's time or work or services on people's sort of good nature quite often initially. And I think that again, like them being brought into the team and understanding the why and not just being this transactional relationship of finances or jobs or whatever it is. Afterwards, and during and afterwards, I was really struck by how many people sort of thanked us for being a part of it, where we almost were like, oh no, we feel indebted to you for like believing in us, trusting us to kind of like execute the vision. Obviously, we felt the pressure of like, what if we can't do, what if we don't do this? Do we let you down? They were like thankful that they were a part of it and they got the opportunity to be involved. And that has to come back to, again, what the guys said, just understanding the why, feeling a part of it, seeing what your contribution does and the difference it makes, and ultimately feeling they felt it was their row, rather than just, here's some cash and we never see head nor tail of it. And that's the thing I really took from it, just that extra bit of time to bring people in and empower, them feeling part of it, made that they were like, I was really bowled over by the fact that they just that they were thanking us for basically helping us out, which I couldn't believe. I thought that was a hugely powerful thing to sort of take away from it.
So I just one observation, humour me. I think rowing an ocean should be mandatory for all RAF personnel. Wholly unrealistic, I know, but I think in terms of what we've all learned from it, that the value in terms of how we've physically, mentally and emotionally developed as individuals is huge, but most importantly, how we've come together, gelled as a team, changed our ways of doing leadership, teamwork, has been life-changing. It's so great that we've had that opportunity, but I just hope we can reinvest that back into the Air Force now, and that's certainly what I believe we all want to try and do.
With a look back at some recent news stories from the Royal Air Force, I'm SAC Victoria Andrews, and this is Reheat on Inside Air. That will be the very last time I introduce myself as SAC, because as of July 1st, the RAF will introduce 3 new rank titles to reflect a modern and diverse next generation Royal Air Force. New recruits will be known as Air Recruits. Air Specialist Class 2 will replace LAC, and the rank of SAC will become known as Air Specialist Class 1. These are abbreviated to AOR, AS1 and AS2. The RAF has updated its strategy following last year's integrated review of security, defence, development and foreign policy. On the new strategy, Chief of the Air Staff Air Chief Marshal Sir Mike Wixton made this statement: We operate in an era of strategic competition and confrontation, with nations actively establishing the international order that we rely on for our security, stability and prosperity. This strategy should inspire, inform and cohere everything we do as a service, so that together we will achieve the Royal Air Force vision to be the most operationally successful, agile and innovative Air Force in the world, always there for our nation. Aviation Task Force 3 has been taking part in Exercise Griffin Thunder with Lithuanian artillery, anti-tank soldiers and Portuguese Marines. This involved Joint Helicopter Command Puma helicopters from RAF Benson, delivering safety and familiarisation training to 350 NATO personnel, before conducting support helicopter experience flights and recce troop insertions. And finally, deployed personnel will benefit from a new portable gym, which is being given a test run on Operation Biloxi in Romania for the first time. Fitness classes can be difficult to organise when on ops, but these shipping container style gyms will now give personnel the opportunity to take part in group classes or to work out individually. That's Reheat on Inside Air.
I'm SAC Simon Ross with this episode's Name That Noise. That was the sound of a luggage carousel at the RAF Bryce Norton Terminal building. Just like when you fly away on your holidays, when personnel bound for flights check their bags in, they are placed onto a weight carousel. Documents are checked before the bag is carried by the carousel to the back of the check-in desk, and luggage is palletised for loading onto the aircraft. RAF Bryce Norton in Oxfordshire is the largest RAF station, with approximately 5,800 service personnel, 1,200 contractors and 300 civilian staff. Passengers and cargo arrive by road and air on a 24-hour basis, 365 days a year. With its mixed fleet of aircraft, RAF Bryce Norton provides tactical air transport as well as air-to-air refuelling support for fast jet aircraft, both on operations and in support of UK homeland defence.
That's all for this episode of Inside Air. Please give us a review and subscribe on your favourite podcast app, and join us again soon.
You've been listening to Inside Air, a behind-the-wire view of the Royal Air Force, its people, technology and operations. If you're serving in the RAF and have a story for us, please speak to your unit media and communications officer. Inside Air is written and produced for the Royal Air Force by RAF Media Reserves.